For this video, I decided to try something a little new. I took the 5 paddles I ranked in the overall top 5 for 2024, and I did an extended testing session with 3 of the most paddle-savvy players in my area, followed by a roundtable breakdown of the pros and cons of each paddle, including their personal ranking of these paddles 1 through 5. I'll include some B-roll of the gameplay throughout the video for those who like to watch, and you'll have to forgive the video quality of one of the angles on one of my cameras, since this is the first time I've used multiple camera angles for a single shoot, but I'll have that worked out for next time. So please let me know if you like this sort of a setup for future videos. And lastly, each of the paddles that we talk about in this video can be purchased at a discount with this channel's discount code and through the link in the description below, which does give a small commission to this channel, enabling me to make future videos like this and is very appreciated. So with that, let's cut over to the good stuff. All right, we've got another edition of the Court Report, Community Paddle Review Edition. This week I've got some of the okayest players of the area in to test 5 of the paddles that I had in the top 5 paddles of the year. We'll do some introductions and get talking about these paddles. From the paddles we have today, we've got the Neonic Flare Prime X, the Spartus Olympus, the Pulse V, the Joola 3S Perseus, and then I brought all 3 editions of the J2K, which is the 14 and 16 millimeter J2K, and the 16 millimeter, which is the only thickness of the J2Ti. So let's just start with introductions. I want each of these guys, if you just say who you are, of course, maybe what level you play for context, and what paddle you usually use as your main paddle.
Well, thanks, Dustin. Returning participant, I guess, at this point. Domas, been playing for about a couple of years, 4 or 5-ish, eventually 5-0-ish, hopefully. Currently play with a Chorus Fire. If y'all watched the previous 2 episodes, I love that thing, so not surprisingly. But yeah, I appreciate the invite and enjoyed it.
Domas is sticking true to the Fire EX.
Domas is selling himself short. He's a 5-0, not a 4-5.
Yeah, I should say, I've corrected Domas a lot of times. Domas is a clear 5-0 player. Go ahead, Brent.
Hey, my name is Brent. I am a 5-0-ish player. I've been playing for a couple of years. My duper's 5'3", just throwing that out there.
Whoa, holy.
My current main paddle is Pickleball Apes Pulse S, and I think it's an amazing paddle, and happy to be here.
Great, thanks, Brent.
Sweet. I'm Nathan Evans. I'd like to think I'm a 5-0 player. Yeah, I am the teaching pro at Pickles and Play, where we are currently filming this video. So if you're in the Raleigh area and want to take any lessons, I'm your guy. Yeah, I'm a 5-0 player. I've been playing for almost 3 years now. Happy to be here. Main paddle is the Vatic Saga. Just started using that a few weeks ago. So pretty good paddle.
His main paddle is my Vatic Saga.
That's right. Yeah, whatever Dustin gives me at the time is my main paddle.
Yeah, I think one reason I wanted to have these guys on in particular is all these guys are really good with their paddle knowledge. They know a lot about paddles. They try a lot of my paddles, and I get feedback from them on the regular.
Yeah.
You may have gathered, and it's probably important to note that the perspectives that each of these guys share today is one of that of the advanced level player. These guys are all really good players. So they represent the 5-0 and above category. So keep that in mind with what you might think a player in that realm might like.
And I think for context, I think both of you guys play tennis, right?
No.
Or okay, so Nate and I are the non-tennis players, yeah. Because Brent and I were talking about it, and we had very different views on some of the paddles, possibly because of the tennis or lack of thereof background.
Yeah. Wait, do you play tennis?
Okay. Oh, man, I would have been I've played tennis, but I suck. Yeah, no, I'm very rigid. I'm not fluid like these guys.
I'm glad I look like I played tennis, though.
Yeah, that's a compliment. You do. You flow well.
I mean, I hit a ball against a wall when I was a kid, but yeah.
And then we're going to just go through each. I want to just hear, without explanation, what each of your favorite paddles were, just to kind of give a big picture. And then we'll talk about each of these paddles individually, and then I'm going to have these guys rank their paddles if they were to pick these 1 through 5. So, Domas, what was your favorite of our bunch today?
Yeah, so I think the Olympus Spartus was my favorite. Kind of a close run call between that and the Neonic, but I think the Olympus is the only one I would consider switching to if I was still shopping for a paddle at the moment.
So for me, I've already said that my main is a Pulse S, so the Pulse V felt the most similar to me and felt the best out of all these paddles. I recognize that I'm biased in that. If you take that out, I'd say probably the Joola Perseus 3S was my favorite paddle of the bunch.
Upset. Wow. I would have to go with the J2Ti. I think that was my favorite of the day.
Ooh, that's great. So we had a different paddle from everybody, from their favorites.
They're all good paddles.
Oh, my favorite. I don't get asked that.
I mean, he's already made that video, right?
Yeah, I mean, I made my top 10 of the year based on what I think is best for everybody. But if I were to pick one for myself, I have been maining the Pulse V for a while. My favorite is now the Pulse X, but I think today I played the best with the 3S.
Dustin,
it was
man of
nice
the
to like
people.
just be effortless and play hot. But
What'd you say you played best with? The 3.
well, all of them.
Oh.
The best of us with, you mean,
I
or
thought
the
you
best of
meant
the
which one
past?
did you
No,
play best with?
no, I don't know. Maybe the 3S.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
I don't know.
Gotcha.
Yeah, okay. So let's just run through these, and we'll talk about the pros and cons of each. I told each of these guys they can say anything good or bad. Just if I don't agree, I'll erase it. No, just kidding. Let's just start with, since this is closest to me, let's start with the Neonic Flare Prime X. Domas?
Yeah, sure. Should I just move my lips and you can just dub me over with whatever needs to be said?
The right answer?
Exactly. For me, that one was by far the most surprising. I'm not normally a fan of the standard shape, so I thought I would hate it. Normally, for me, the sweet spot is just kind of in the wrong place when I play with a shorter paddle, but it was very surprising how good that felt. It felt very natural, very poppy, enough power from that shape, and I guess that was one of the paddles that had some lead on it on the sides, so maybe that added even more stability. But yeah, it just felt like a very good blend of stable but also very poppy. Just overall felt good and surprisingly so for me.
So we're just talking about the flare. Yeah, so Domas mentioned that we had differing views on a lot of paddles. However, we overlap on that one. I was really surprised myself at how much I liked the Neonic Flare Prime X. I'm not really a standard wide body kind of guy either. I tend to go for hybrid or elongated. So I was a little nervous playing with that. But it had great pop. Decent power, felt really stable, which, standard wide body would feel that way anyways. And I thought it played really well. Probably the most surprised of any of the paddles that I played with was the Neonic Flare Prime X.
Yeah, I thought the Neonic was a good paddle. I used the wide body standard shape for a while. I think I've kind of grown out of it. I like the reach that like a hybrid paddle gives you. To me, it kind of felt like a standard like Gen 2 thermoform paddle, which
fair,
I
sure.
assume it is. I don't know.
Yeah.
I didn't love the shape. Maybe it's just that game I played my worst. It is very poppy. That kind of stuck out. It does kind of lack in the power department some, like on big swings. Very poppy. I didn't love the shape. But,
Yeah, that's fair. And I think my take pretty much matches what most of you guys said. It's got good pop. Mm-hmm. It's very light, so it's lower on power, at least from what I experienced. And it is important to note, I started with this one with 3 grams of a little, weighted bar on the side there. I just think it needs it. So I didn't think it was worth trying at stock and then adding the weight, because I just think everybody should start with a little weight, and it's so light that it doesn't matter anyway. So know that ahead of time. As far as this, was there any particular cons that stood out to you from the Flare Prime X? Since you have the mic, Nate, why don't you go if you have any
I
obvious
think
cons?
the only real cons would just be, like with any wide body paddle, just the lack of reach in the kitchen. I like to be able to like reach in, take balls out of the air, and I think with the wide body, you just obviously lose some of that. And then maybe just lack of power on like big swings. It's definitely got like pop for like counters and stuff, but serves and returns, I felt like, had a trouble generating a lot of power with it, I guess.
Okay. So you're not a fan of the shape, and then you want more plow through like power on bigger
Yes.
swings is what you're saying. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, that's fair.
That's
fair. Okay, great. Brent?
So similar to Nate, I play with longer paddles, and so the standard shape, I did feel a little bit like I couldn't reach the same balls in the kitchen. I like to reach in as well. I couldn't reach them and hit them in a good enough spot on the paddle. I'd end up hitting them near the edge, which would result in a pop-up or right in the net and just not good results. So if there's any con to that one, it would be that it was just the standard shape that I just have trouble adjusting to because it's just not what I'm used to. But overall, I thought it was a great paddle.
Not your shape. Yeah. Again, a shape thing. Okay. Yeah, that's fair. That's fine. Domas?
Yeah, kind of echo the same thing. I think correct me if I'm wrong, but I think last time you had the Neonic, one of the Neonics in an elongated or maybe hybrid shape.
We had the Neonic Force.
Yeah, and I definitely prefer I normally play with an elongated, but I mean the hybrids are like so close to elongated. It's like who even knows the difference?
Yeah, you don't sacrifice a lot there.
But yeah, for me, this one, and actually I'm looking now at the two, like the widest paddles on the table, looking at just the ball marks, it looks like the Neonic has a higher sweet spot. So I didn't really notice like the lack of reach so much. I'm also, 2 feet taller than the other two guys here.
Yeah.
So I didn't notice that as much. But yeah, for me, it's just like, if I was to get that paddle, I would get it in a different shape. But otherwise, it's a great paddle.
Yeah.
And actually, uncommonly, I guess, for a wider body, it's got like a great handle length, even for me, with my big old arms. Like, I had no problem holding one-handed, two-handed, whatever. So, not really many cons. Just, I would not buy this shape, but I would buy this paddle. And I think in general, for people, the pop might be too much.
Yeah.
People might not benefit, especially newer people, might not benefit from just having way too much pop.
Not a control paddle, for sure.
Yeah, definitely not.
Yeah.
Yeah, I forgot. Another con that I had for that paddle is the high pop on it. I'm not a fan of super high pop paddles, and that one was right on the edge for me. It's like it straddled like being the perfect amount and being too much pop for me. And I think that one on a lot of my flicks and counters, it came off a little hotter than I was expecting. And some of the dinks I would pop up as well. So that's a good point, Domas. It is pretty good pop on it and might be just a smidge too much pop for my liking.
Yeah. This is sparking chains of thought. Okay, go ahead. All right,
well, no, I was thinking, because you're talking about we're all advanced players, but if you are a beginner, I do think the wide body paddle is maybe better for you because it gives you more forgiveness and bigger sweet spot, as opposed to like us, like at an advanced level. I think hybrid elongated may be better just because you need that extra reach, but in a beginner level I don't think you're reaching in the kitchen trying to take balls as much out of the air. So yeah, if you're a beginner or like intermediate level player, like I think that may be a good paddle for you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's a good question. Domas asked if they have other thickness for this, and no, they don't have a different thickness for this. And I know they have a lot of Neonic's always making new stuff, so I don't know exactly what's on the docket for the coming year, but that would be interesting actually to have different thicknesses and different lengths of this setup. As not to dig too much into the weeds, but it's got a small, dense cell core, and it is 14 millimeters. It's got fiberglass in the face, so it's a really cool. I like the feel of it. It would be interesting to see, an elongated or hybrid in this thickness and construction. Let's hear some thoughts then on the Spartus Olympus, which is, maybe I'll just give a little, the Neonic Flare Prime X is a Gen 2 thermoform paddle. It's rock iron fiber. The Spartus Olympus is hybrid shaped. It's also 14 millimeters. Small cell core, so it's more dense feeling, and it's filled with foam, kind of a less expensive foam throughout the entire face. So a little unique in that regard, but let's hear some thoughts from you guys on that.
Like I mentioned, that's my favorite paddle out of the 5. I've played with and against guys who had one of these for the past at least half a year or so, and everybody seems to like it. I've never really heard bad things about it. I think to me it's kind of similar to my thoughts about the Chorus Fire. It just does everything. It actually even be more like something like a shapeshifter where like it's a good paddle for most people. It might also still have like a smidge too much pop for some, but like I don't know, for me it felt close to perfect for me personally. And again, this is just like being abnormally sized. The handle could be a smidge longer, but it's like if you put a Neonic handle on the Olympus, it'd be pretty much perfect. And yeah, if I was shopping around, I'd strongly consider it. Really don't have anything bad that comes to mind. The paddle just works.
So this is where me and Domas diverge on our paddle preferences. And so, a lot of the reviews I saw for the Spartus Olympus, even to this day, are like, hey, this is a great paddle for an advanced player that can control the pop, that can control the power and whatnot. And it just does not work for me. For me, it has too much pop. It's almost springy off the face, is the feeling that I get from that. Is when I go to hit either a reset or a dink, or if I'm outstretched, the ball feels like it kind of sinks in to the face a bit and then springs off, much more than any of these other paddles. Even the 3S, it didn't feel as springy as the Olympus to me. So with that being said, the Olympus was my least favorite paddle of the bunch, even though I mained it for like 3 or 4 weeks. I think I tried to force myself into playing well with the Olympus, and I eventually realized that either I'm just not good enough for the Olympus or it's just not my play style. So it just was a little too springy for me. The power is great, but my touch shots, resets, dinks, they all feel like they spring off just too much, and it's too much of an adjustment for me to change that. I think coming from tennis, I naturally have longer strokes, and I use more wrist than you're probably supposed to in pickleball. So any paddle that's springy, I end up getting in trouble with that paddle.
So that's interesting. I actually, for context, I actually, so that's actually very, very interesting what Brent was saying, because I actually bought his Chorus Fire off of him, and it kind of makes sense now when you're talking about the springiness. Like when we did our first test, and like the Fire was the first paddle I tested, and I was trying to describe that kind of like the wiry, springy feel. For me, that was a big plus. I loved the feel of that, and I think that's probably the same with the Olympus. I love both of those paddles, and yeah, got the Fire off of Brent as well. So I guess it's
still a great paddle, Matt. Don't come for me. It's still a great paddle.
I think it's just the feel. It's just, for me that's a plus. But yeah, it makes sense also with the tennis background and long strokes.
So what I'm hearing is you can be a 5'3" duper and not play well with springy paddles. Is that right, Brent?
You still can be too trash for a power paddle at 5'3".
Well, they always say, you can learn to control it and reset, and I do think some of that's true, but I do think at a certain point it's if it's poppy, there's just you're always gonna be worse at resets and shots like that. That's the downside. Yeah.
Yeah, my duper might be the lowest here, even though I'm probably the best here. But I usually do play better with more control paddles, even though at the higher level. Every once in a while, I'll play good with the 3S, but then my dreams are crushed, and I like the control paddles. So, yeah. Okay, Nate, tell us your thoughts on the Olympus. You made this for a while.
I did use the Olympus for 2 weeks. I don't know. I was in between paddles at that point. I like it. I've never really liked 14 millimeter paddles, as we'll figure out later when we talk about the J2s. Yeah, I think the Olympus is a good 14 millimeter paddle. It definitely has, I would say, good pop and power. I think a lot of times, its paddles don't have both. I feel like that does. The only downside, kind of what Brent was saying, is you do have to dial in the drops and the resets. And if your game style is just the type where you rely heavy on being able to hit really good consistent drops and being able to reset the ball, it's probably not the paddle for you. But if you're a more aggressive player who, tends to hit more drives and doesn't like to reset the ball as much, it may be a good paddle for you. Yeah. I'm not saying you can't reset and drop the ball with it. Just takes a little more effort and a little more focus.
Yeah, that kind of sounds a lot like what Brent was saying that he hears from reviewers. It's tailored to aggressive, attack-oriented type play styles. A little harder to reset, a little harder to drop and dink with. If I heard you right, Brent. Right?
Yeah, no, I feel exactly that way. With the Olympus, I have to think too much about resetting, whereas something like the Pulse or something that's more all court, I feel like it's just second nature. It's just I'm not thinking of it. I'm more like in flow state, I guess. So the less my tiny brain has to think on the pickleball court, the better I am. So
that's good. That's a good point. Whatever paddle a person, this is good advice for me and for anybody. Whatever paddle can put you in a flow state where you don't have to think about controlling or using the paddle. That's probably the paddle for you. That's a great point, Brent. Sure. Okay, let's talk about the Pulse V then. Go ahead, Domas.
Yeah, sure. So I played with the hybrid shape for a couple of games before. Again, similar to the Neonic, if I was getting an Apes paddle, that wouldn't be the shape I would go for. It'd probably be the hybrid, actually, because they're elongated, I think, is too long and narrow for my liking, so I'd go with a hybrid shape. Aside from that, for me, I think that one was the most plush feeling. And I think that's probably a good thing for a lot of people. Clearly, I might be the outlier here, and it's funny because on the court, I'm probably the least aggressive person. Definitely least aggressive off the court. But I do prefer the more aggressive style paddles, I guess. Yeah. So for me, it's like it's comfortable, like resetting and dropping and things like that, but I have to swing a little bit too much to be consistent. Like, third shot drops, I have to swing through it, and I lack consistency with that. Whereas with something like an Olympus or the mods or any Gen 3, it's such a short motion. It's easier to be consistent for me.
Interesting.
So that's really, and again, I will repeat this. I think their handles are, given the wide shape, you can't really choke up on the throat even with massive hands. Yeah. So the handle could be slightly longer just for two-handed backhand, since everybody seems to be going that way now.
Yeah, very typical, standard / wide body shape with the shorter handle. And interesting, you think you feel more consistent with the power paddles where you can short swing it up, not have to put more effort. Okay, cool. Brent?
So for me, you've obviously already heard it was my favorite paddle. I main the Pulse S. This one feels very similar to a Pulse S with slightly more pop, I would say. Feels slightly more stable. Does feel nice and plush. Everything just felt really good with that. Very familiar. It has a great combo of power and pop. It's probably on the lower end with the power, a little bit higher on the pop. But for me, it's perfect because on my drives and putaways, I take longer strokes. And so I don't need a ton of power in a paddle. Yeah. And, it just felt really good.
Yeah. Tennis player here. Coming from a tennis player, Brent's strokes look a lot like a tennis player's strokes, where they're bigger, and he likes to swing with nice fluid motion. It's interesting. I think it's important to maybe tell me when you say pop. Like, we've got our Fire X pop, our Pulse V pop, maybe like our 3S pop. When you say pop, what do you mean? Like, describe how the pop feels to you with the Pulse V. I think it's probably important for people to understand.
So the Pulse V, as far as like if you're comparing it to like a 3S or even the Olympus, it is lower. It feels lower than that to me. Like, it's not quite as poppy, but it has that pop in reserve, I guess. Like, for me at the kitchen, I feel really comfortable flicking, doing a lot of wrist stuff, which I know can be frowned upon if you're a traditionalist when it comes to pickleball. Sure. But for me, it has just the right amount of pop to let me go crazy with the wrists at the net and not get in too much trouble like I would with something like the Olympus or even the Perseus or something with a higher level of pop.
Yeah, wrist isn't necessarily bad if you can control it. Just
exactly.
ask Gabe Tardio.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay,
yeah.
Okay, thanks, Brent. Okay, your thoughts on the
yeah, so I think I'm like the one person who had never used any like Pickleball Apes paddle before today. So I had like no prior experience coming in. To me, it kind of felt like the Paddle Tech paddles. Like I used the 𝐿 one for a while, and like one of the Annalee ones for a while. Yeah. I felt with those, like they felt plush and like you could reset, but on like bigger swings and putaways, you like were able to generate power. Yeah. And I think that's kind of like, what everyone says about the Paddle Tech paddles. I felt like the Pulse was similar, which is why I liked it. I think my one complaint with the Paddle Tech paddle, specifically like the 𝐿 X paddle, the sweet spot was just like so small. So for off-center hits, I felt like it would just die. I didn't get that vibe with the Pulse, and maybe it's just because like it was the wide body and it's just naturally got a bigger sweet spot. I would be interested in trying the hybrid version of that, just because, what Brent uses.
You know a guy.
Yeah. So. Maybe I'll have to do that. Just to, get like my true opinion, because, just wide body, I don't love wide body paddles. But yeah, I would definitely be interested to try the hybrid shape version of that paddle.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so you're saying some aspects of your paddle techs in terms of maybe, like I'm hearing the feel and the dwell and stuff like that, dwell time was comparable, but with a better sweet spot is kind of what you're saying.
To me, those paddles like have unique feels, and I think like the Pulse was pretty similar to the Alshon paddle and the other paddle techs I've used, the new paddle techs.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah. That sounds great. Well, let's hear some thoughts. I know you got to leave soon. Let's hear some thoughts then on the 3S, and go ahead, Nate. Why don't you start?
So I think the 3S to me is definitely the most like unique of the bunch. I don't know if I've ever hit a paddle that feels like the 3S does. Very plush, foamy. I don't know if that's a good word to use, but like you can definitely like it's one of those you can tell there's foam in there. Definitely a lot of power that you don't really have to swing hard to generate. I think kind of the signature of any foam paddle is that, you can just barely swing and the ball like flies off the paddle. And I definitely get that vibe from the 3S.
Yeah, you can't count how many times I hit Nate in the chest today with the 3S.
Oh, is that the 3S? I still got a mark. Should I show it? Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, yeah, for sure. Definitely like less than the mod, if you've ever used the mod. I think the Joola 3S paddles are a nice kind of die down of that. So if you love the mod paddles, but you just wanted something that was a little less crazy, the 3S is probably the right paddle for you.
Yeah, and legal. Yeah.
Exactly. And so, I mean, we'll just go ahead and give our negatives. Like, I just know at the price point it's at, you can probably get a paddle that's better or pretty similar than that.
Yeah, so. $280. I think you can buy that through, with the code through Pickleball Drop Shop or Pickle Madness or whatever for 10% off, which ends up being like $250 or something. But it is expensive. Yeah. You get some good power and whatever with it, but it's expensive for sure. Brent, why don't you share your thoughts on the 3S?
Yeah, so for me, similar to what Nate was saying, great power, great pop, a good feel on it. It is on the plush side, and it does feel like a foam paddle.
Yeah, this is classic foam.
Yeah, classic foam. I almost like want to compare and contrast these two things because they're both, the Pulse V is foam enhanced. It's not in the core, whereas is the Joola in the core?
No, the 3S is this is a good differentiation. So they both have the rings, actually the Pulse V is 3, but they have perimeter rings of foam, multiple perimeter rings of foam. But the Pulse V's rings are encased in a carbon fiber tubule, so they're not free flowing foam. And the 3S has 2 layers of foam that are just kind of open, so they're not protected by anything per se. But
that makes sense, and that does make sense from how they play as well. So we've got 2 foam enhanced paddles that play very differently, in my opinion, than each other. Like the Pulse V, massive sweet spot, good power, decent pop, but nothing compared to the Joola, where it's high power, high pop. I was getting crazy spin when I was returning some of y'all's balls that you hit with this paddle. The ball would hit and just kick off. So like this one seemed to be the most spinny, the highest spin potential of all the paddles. But they play very differently. I enjoyed the way this played. It's just a little too much for my long, wristy strokes.
Yeah. I think that's a really good take. I agree very much with that take. More poppy, but similar in some aspects. But power, not so much power.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense that foam gives more than carbon fiber encased foam, right? It's more of a trampoline, frankly. That's all it is, right?
Yeah.
To me, the 3S is like the mod that Joola should have released. I think the mod should have been skipped over as a beta for maybe for the reviewers. It's to me, it pretty much is better in every way than the mod. Except for maybe the 2 weeks that the mod actually works in its sweet spot.
Yeah, and you used the mod as your main paddle for a while, right?
Yeah. For about 3.5 weeks until it absolutely shattered inside. Yeah. Exactly. Like the 3S feels good enough on power, on pop, on grit. It doesn't need more, and the mod is more at the, I guess, sacrificing durability. It seems like.
Sure.
I also played with a 14 mod versus this is the 16. For these trampoline paddles, I don't think the thickness matters that much. They all kind of feel similar, but like I like this paddle a lot. It's a little bit on the heavy side, so if you don't like its stock, I think adding lead to it, for me, it would be too heavy. But I do like its stock. Like overall, I think it's a great paddle. Personally, I don't think it's taking the game in the right direction. I think it's a little bit too much on some. But that's not up to me. And yeah, I think the price is, if money is no object, then yeah, it's a great paddle. If you're looking to, buy something more budget friendly, then no. I think it's this day and age with the Gen 3s around, I think it's a great option out of the Gen 3s.
Yeah, definitely expensive, and I agree. I think it's. I told people for a long time they should get this instead of the mod, and now that the mod's bad, I think this is the next best alternative.
Yeah,
right?
And just to echo what you were saying about this is the mod that Joola should have made, I completely agree with that. I've hit a mod before. I'm not sure if it was crushed or not at the time, but it was insane. So it probably was crushed. I was expecting similar levels from this 3S, and it was surprisingly less powerful than maybe it was a crush mod. But regardless, it was surprisingly less powerful than that. And I'm honestly like, this level of power and pop, I think should be either the very top or like just underneath it should be the cutoff. I think I'm okay with 3S's as far as like remaining legal across UPA and USAP. I was pleasantly surprised with how it wasn't completely overpowering.
Yeah, I agree. I like that for a top end of power. Let's share some thoughts then. I just clumped together because the J2K and the J2Ti, I have both the 16 and 14 millimeters. Mm-hmm. So whatever these guys want to share about whichever of those models, I'll just have them say whatever they want about the three of them, and we'll go from there.
Yeah. This was also my first time ever hitting the J2 Honolulu paddles. I've heard good things. I know a lot of people like them. I just felt like they were like great all-around paddles, probably more than all other of the four groupings. They all felt pretty similar. I just felt like they did everything well. If you want like a good all-court paddle, I think the J2s are good options. I love the hybrid shape. I'd like to hear like what's more different about the titanium paddle, like other than the other 16 millimeter, just because that was my favorite, and I'd like to know why I liked it better, like how it makes it perform differently than just the regular J2 paddle.
Why did you like it better?
I felt like, trying to remember. I think my serves and returns were deeper, so power was better. But I don't think I sacrificed anything in terms of like resets and drops.
Okay.
I didn't think the titanium face would matter that much, but I really enjoyed it. Like there was a noticeable difference between the regular J2 16 and Ti.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
As soon as I hit it, I was like, oh yeah, that feels good.
Cool.
Yeah.
I
hated the 14 millimeter.
Yes, he did. Why'd you hate it so much?
I don't know. I'm just not a big 14 millimeter guy. I like 16 millimeter paddles, or at least I like it to feel like a 16 millimeter paddle, like the Spartus. But the 16 millimeter and the titanium were very good paddles in my opinion.
Rest in peace, Neonic Flare Prime X and the 14 millimeter J2K. You're not for Nate. Thanks. Great. Okay, Brent.
Yeah. So for me, the J2K is a great, just all-around paddle. It has kind of just, to me at least, like right down the middle, average power, pop, spin. The sweet spot does feel great. It's got a high twist weight, which is great. For me, I was kind of left wanting more power, wanting more pop. I know I said I don't like high pop paddles, but maybe the J2K 16 and the J2Ti 16 are just a little bit too low in pop for me.
Okay. Yeah.
I personally really liked the J2K14. I know you hated it, but I really liked it. I think it gave me that extra bit of pop. It didn't have the plow through that I was wanting from like a 16 millimeter. I think adding weight would fix that. But hearing Nate's review of the 14, I was like, oh, this thing's gonna suck. But I enjoyed the 14 probably the most, with the J2Ti being second and the original J2K 16 being third in this pile of paddles.
Because for you, it sounds like it was too soft.
It was a little too soft. Didn't quite have the power and pop I was wanting. My returns were falling short. My serves were falling short. Whereas the 14, it was just doing more for me.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thanks, Brent.
Yeah, kind of similar thoughts to these guys. Like the J2K, when it first came out, like everybody had good things to say about it. To me, they're a little bit similar to like the Shapeshifter. It's like if you retired your first, Amazon or Walmart paddle and you're still addicted, like you want to buy something good that's going to work for, $150-ish. Most people will find it works for their game, I think, up to a certain level where you start to like be more nitpicky and very specific about what you need or what your game needs. I think it's good for anyone. I don't think it's perfect for necessarily anybody. So like once what Brent's saying, like it's maybe a smidge too soft. Like once you get to that level of precision where you feel that difference actually makes a difference in your game. Yeah. I think you kind of grow out of them. I think it's like the perfect mass market paddle. Yeah. Like versus like a Perseus 3S. I don't think you should see it on rec courts with 3-5-ish or below players like ripping balls at each other and playing dodgeball essentially. Yeah, same with the Olympus probably, and even the Neonic probably. Yeah. It's if anything, it was a little underwhelming. It didn't stand out in any category. To me, it's like the next iteration, an upgrade to like a Legacy that now is like probably a perfectly average Gen 2 paddle in like every category. It's just it's just good. It's not for me. I got used to the more Gen 3-ish power and pop to where I have to do too much work with these paddles, but I think they're probably the most mass market paddles out of these five to me. Yeah.
You're saying it's a good catch-all kind of.
Yeah,
it's a paddle for the masses, so to speak.
I think it's similar to like, not that it plays similarly, but like out of Selkirk paddles, I think the Lux is addressing the widest audience of pickleball players. Sure. But like if we tried them, I think all four of us would hate them because it's not going to fit our game. But I think it's addressing the biggest needs out there for majority, since like the skill level is a pyramid, right? Yeah. The lowest level is always going to be the biggest market, and I think it's truly perfect. Like I would never feel bad about recommending that paddle to somebody. Yeah.
It's the perfect.
I'm going to take that a little closer.
It's the perfect just all-around paddle where if you're just working on your game, if you're at that 3.0, 3.5 level and you're just working on mastering the soft game, getting the dinks, getting the drops, I think it's perfect for that. And it's no surprise that it was in almost everybody's, as far as YouTube paddle reviewers, they're at least their top 5, if not like paddle of the year, because I think whatever iteration you want to choose from these, it's the most, like Dom was saying, mass marketable paddle that would appeal to the masses in pickleball. So not surprising it was highly ranked by everyone.
Yeah.
Except the 14 millimeter. Yeah, maybe that's why I liked it so much. Maybe I'm just a 3.5 still trying to work on my game.
Yeah. And then for funsies here, I just want to hear if you guys were to rank these 1 through 5, your favorite to least favorite, what would it be? Let's start with you, Nate. What's your favorite or least favorite here?
So I think if I was to go my favorite, I would go the J2Ti Sword and Shield 16 millimeter. I think that was my favorite. Second place, I would probably go the regular J2 Sword and Shield 16 millimeter. I felt like they were pretty similar.
All right.
Third place, I would have to go the Pulse V.
Okay.
I thought that was a pretty good paddle. Fourth place, the Spartus Olympus. Fifth place, I would go the Neonic paddle.
Okay. Yeah.
So what am I on? Fifth place now?
Yeah.
fifth place. I would
Fifth
go
place,
the,
whatever, the last one.
Okay, the Joola.
Okay, besides the 14s.
All right, well, yeah.
Which
14's going to be dead last. Don't buy the paddle on that. I'm out.
Wow, okay, yeah. So for fifth is Nate, is the Joola 3S. Thanks, Nate. All right, Brent, what you got your favorites 1 through 5 here?
All right, so for me, 1 through 5, my favorite, obviously the Pulse V. It feels the most similar to my Pulse S, and it's just all around a great paddle. Second, it's really hard to choose between the 3S and the Neonic. They're very different paddles, but if I had to choose, I would say Perseus 3S as number 2, Neonic as number 3. Oh, the J2 series as number 4, and the Olympus. I'm sorry, it's number 5.
Wow. Yeah,
for
interesting.
Me.
So you got.
I can't.
Wow.
I'm too trash for the Olympus.
Wow, that's an interesting spread. Okay, all right, thanks, Brent. Domas?
Yeah, I think this is going to be a third or possibly fourth iteration of this ranked list. For me, yeah, as I mentioned, Olympus is number 1. That's the one I would consider switching to if I was shopping.
Yeah.
Neonic Flare, I think, is number 2. I would prefer it being elongated, but I think I can get past my mostly, frankly, vanity. I think elongated paddles look better than standard shape. But yeah, as an elongated, it might even be my number 1, honestly. I would love to try that.
Yeah, you heard it here first, Neonic, an elongated Flare Prime X. What would that be, a Force Prime X? The Neonic Force Prime X. You heard it from Domas first. Okay?
Send me a demo.
Yeah, Domas and I will try it. We'll try it here. We'll give you our pros and cons. Okay, number 3, Domas?
Yeah, I think third is going to be the 3S. I like it. I think it's a great paddle. Yeah, I agree that it's probably like the top end of where paddles should be. Assuming the foam doesn't stretch out nearly as much as on the mod, I think it's great. Yeah, I think the Pulse V is number 4. I think it might be higher, again, if it was elongated. I think it's probably hurt a little bit
wide body
by
shape,
the shape.
or standard shape, sure. Yeah.
And then, yeah, the Sword and Shield, I'm a little bit different maybe from these guys, especially Nate. I didn't feel a huge difference between the paddles. To me, I think it was hard to tell. I played 3 games in a row switching between the J2 paddles, and I think I was just getting used to them more so than actually feeling much of a difference between the different paddles. If I had to rank them, I'd say the TI was the best feeling one for me.
Yeah.
But again, not a huge difference for me between them.
Yeah, that's fair.
I don't think, as I mentioned, I don't think they're bad. I think just out of this set, it's my least favorite.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Domas. So that's what we have. This was super fun. So thanks, everybody, for doing this. These are what I picked to be the top 5 paddles of the year, and I actually really liked that we had varying opinions on all of these paddles. So thanks to Domas, Brent, and Nate for coming out and representing the most average players of the Chapel Hill, North Carolina pickleball scene.
Right.
So thanks, everybody.